Hello, welcome to another episode of Spritz of Wisdom. Now, today, let's get straight into the sip of the week, which are my highs and lows of the previous week here in South Italy. I would say definite high Saturday. Saturday was the 1st of November, a public holiday here in Italy, which meant that I didn't have to work. So, always a really, really good thing. But not only that, the weather here in the Salerno province, anyway, was absolutely beautiful. It was 23 degrees and beautiful sunshine, warm temperatures. I felt pretty hot in a cardigan. It was beautiful. And for me, coming from the UK, 23 degrees on the 1st of November is like a dream. So I was really, really happy to experience that and also to be out in nature, because some of what I'm going to talk about in today's episode is this, like getting out more, being in nature and experiencing life, right? So that was a really, really beautiful thing. Now, in terms of lows of the past week, well, there were a couple of little standout moments, I might suggest. Last week, I was so buoyed by the energy from London. Like on Sunday, I sat down and I literally planned out my entire week to the hour, to the literal second, using time blocking on Google Calendar. Now, I love this because I do have chunks of time during the day, which if I'm not careful, I'm not using in the best way possible. And, I'm busy. I've got a lot of things that I'm working on, a lot of ideas that I want to fulfill. And so I've got to be smart with my time. And so I was like, okay, let's block out time to do all of the things I've got to do. Except it became a bit stressful because some of the tasks I had anticipated, would take 1 hour, ended up taking 2. And I kept getting the notifications on my phone telling me it was time to move on to the next activity. And I just found it became a bit stressful. I fell off the wagon. And by the end of the week, I wasn't following any of the plans I had strategically put onto my calendar. So I guess I learned a lesson there in the sense that you can use your time in a better way, but you don't have to necessarily map out tasks like this, particularly when you're not sure really how long they're going to take. So I'm now experimenting with something this week where I'm having like 3 priorities for the day, and they are like my 3 non-negotiables, things that I absolutely must do. So today is Monday, and my 3 non-negotiables for today, for example, are to film this podcast, edit this podcast, which is number 2, because that is a separate job. And then the third is just to do some stuff around the house, some cleaning and things like this. And these are my non-negotiables for today. And I feel like if you can do like this every single day, if you manage to meet all of your non-negotiables on that day, then you can do more, because I'm sure we've always got this never ending to-do list, right? So this is something to consider if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed like I was last week. But yeah, so this is something that I'm trying this week, but kind of tied into that is my second low of last week, in the sense that I'm starting to feel creatively blocked. And it's a shame because I have all these fantastic ideas, but I'm starting to feel overwhelmed, absolutely, but also that I'm not so happy with the things that I'm creating at the moment in this period. And I'm quite open with you on this podcast in the same way that I am with you on my social content, that essentially, I'm planning an expat community, and the goal was to launch it this month in November. And I picked a day that, according to Feng Shui, was like a really, really good day to start a new venture. I'm not happy with what I'm creating. And one thing about me is that everything I do has to be of value to you. I respect your time. I respect your attention. I respect you supporting me. And in order for me to create what I want, I need some more time. And so I've decided that I'm going to push back the launch of my expat community until January 2026. Now, is that quite far away? In a way, yes, but in a way, no, because I think for most people, the last couple of months of the year are extremely hectic with work, because people have like the end of year kind of things that they have to achieve and goals and objectives they've got to meet. But also with Christmas, this becomes a very busy period now. And especially for me, I want to be going out more filming. There's lots of great things happening in the Salerno province during the months of November and, of course, December. I don't know if really now is the best time to launch something. So I'm thinking January is a good time, because at the beginning of the year, there's that creative kind of inspiration. People are feeling fired up. They're feeling inspired. They're ready to change things. And usually I notice that my channel and everything that I create tends to pick up around January, especially because it's when people are thinking about what they want to achieve in that year. And for some people, it's the fact that they want to come and live here in Italy. So I am going to be riding the wave of that kind of inspiration that people feel at the beginning of the year and launch my expat community then. And in a way, I'm really happy that I've taken this decision, because sometimes you have to recognize when something isn't what it could be. And it's not to say that you can't launch things and, improve them as you go along, but I just didn't feel the value was there yet for me to launch it and be happy with it. And the last thing I want to do is launch something that disappoints people. So come January, with an extra 2 months of work behind me, I am nigh on certain it's going to be something packed full of value and just worth the extra 2 month wait. But if you are currently on the wait list for the Aperitivo Lounge, which is the expat community, stay tuned, because I'm going to be designing something that I'll be sending to you in the meantime via your email, in a way to say thank you for your patience, but also to get you thinking about what you want to achieve next year with your dream of moving to Italy. So stay tuned for that. It will be coming very soon. Now, today's full pour. I'm wasting my life in Italy. What a dramatic headline, but actually it's kind of true, because I had a realization recently, and it's been kind of like chipping away at me ever so slightly. But then when I went back to London just over a week ago, I saw things that reinforced to me that what I'm talking about is important, because I work from home, remote work or smart work, as they say here in Italy. And I can spend anything up to 7 hours a day looking at a computer screen, of course, with breaks in between. But it really depends on if all my students connect or not. But essentially, that's a long time. On top of that, I am also creating content. I'm editing, I'm designing things for the website. I was up to now and continue to work on the expat community. Like, I am constantly looking at a screen. And this realization was that I live in one of the most beautiful countries in the world, and I live my life online. And it just made me feel quite sad. The funny thing is, I checked my screen time for the past week. And as you can see here, it's like over 13 hours of screen time. Now, give or take, it was higher than normal, because that included the time that I was traveling to and from London. So, of course, time at the airport, time on the plane. I'm going to be watching content, absolutely. But that number shocked me in a way, because I was like, that's nearly a whole day I have spent looking at a screen on top of my usual screen activities, right? And so it just got me really thinking a lot, because even when I went back to London, I did a bit of a social experiment on the train, I should probably say. It's what it's turned out to be anyway. I didn't get my phone out on the train. And, it wasn't because I was trying to actively avoid using my phone. It was more because there are a lot of phone thefts in London. And so the ex-police officer in me was like, don't take your phone out. So I sat there, and I have to be honest with you, I was on a packed train carriage up to London. Every single person on that train was using their phone. And it was so fascinating to see. People would get on the train, they would sit down, and the first thing they would do was reach for their phone. People would exit the train carriage on their phone. There were people on that train carriage having physical battles with themselves, taking their phone out, then putting it away. 2-3 minutes passed, taking it back out again, putting it away. It was actually really fascinating to watch. And I just realized, as I sat there with my copy of the Evening Standard, because I did this experiment both to London and coming home from London. So in the afternoons, there is a newspaper that isn't actually printed as much nowadays. It used to be printed every single evening, but now I think it's just once a week, called the Evening Standard. And I sat there with my copy of the Evening Standard reading, and I swear I was like the only person on the train doing this. But you know what? I missed the ink on my fingers. Like back in the day when we all used to read newspapers, the inky feeling of like the paper on your fingers. I was like, wow, I've missed this, because now we all consume the news through our phone, right? Through our computer, through our tablet. So it was a really interesting thing to witness. And it kind of stayed with me when I came back here to Italy, because I've noticed how technology is slowly consuming our lives. I've seen it, like I've seen my boyfriend, he will literally be watching the television, looking on YouTube at the same time simultaneously, to the point where I'm like, what are you doing? Are you watching your phone or are you watching television? It's not possible that you can consume both. And I noticed that he was someone, when I first met him, who didn't really use his phone that much. In fact, he was the first person to say, I'm not really into technology in this way. I don't like using my phone a lot. Now he uses it all the time. So the thing what I'm starting to see is that technology, which is a tool designed to assist us, is now really this all-consuming concept. And people are starting to get tired. Digital fatigue is a real thing. And it's interesting because when I got back from London, I did some research and I'm looking down at my phone in case you're wondering. So I want to be sure I get the statistics right. But essentially, there was a consumer digital media survey conducted by New Voodoo in 2025. And they found that 82% of people under 30, so Gen Zers, want to disconnect from the digital world for greater awareness and well-being. And nearly half of millennials have already started cutting back their screen time to ease anxiety and stress. And I thought this was really, really interesting because there is a shift now to disconnecting and unplugging. And I see it on social media, ironically enough, because people are doing videos on YouTube about unplugging from social media, having a digital detox, learning to live again. But I kind of think sometimes there's a bit of an irony to those kinds of things because these videos tell you to do a digital detox or tell you to unplug from social media or talk about why people are doing it. Maybe for a period that content creator doesn't post, but then they're straight back on it again because you know what? It's like going on a diet. Decide to eliminate certain foods or cut down on quantities of food for a period of time. And you do really well and you start to feel good. And this is exactly what happens when you come off social media and the internet, because there are so many feelings of anxiety, comparison. It's not always a good feeling to be online so much. And so when you come off, you do feel better and you find your dopamine hits through other means as opposed to it being through a screen. But then slowly but surely, life kicks back in again. And, you know, in the same way that when you go back to eating normally again after a diet, you tend to put weight back on. It's the same thing with social media. Where you've had this period of being off it, you go back on it. Before you know it, you're fully blown back into the kind of consumption of social media as you were before. And so I've just been thinking so much about this that I've decided to create a movement. Now I'm calling it the modern offline. I'm going to put the links below in the show notes. If you want to come support this movement, be part of it, be inspired to live your life a little less digital, then I think you're going to really enjoy what I'm creating, because I've decided for the next 12 months, I'm going to be posting one long form video a week on YouTube as a vlog, documenting my journey to discovering how to live a life less online, especially as a content creator, right? I'm also going to be posting a couple of reels and shorts a week, nothing too much, because the whole point is I don't want you to stay consuming content online. I actually want you to consume something short and digestible and then apply that to your offline life. But I want to be documenting this journey because the fact is, addressing the elephant in the room, yes, I am talking about the modern offline, yet I'm using social media and the internet to promote it, because this is the reality. This is why it's the modern offline. It's not possible now, especially, to disconnect fully from technology, to disconnect fully from the internet. So much of our lives depend on it. People's jobs depend on it. My work depends on the internet, right? People's livelihoods, communication methods depend on the internet. It's just not possible to completely eliminate it unless you go off grid and you live a life that resembles something from the Stone Age. But what I would say to you is there are ways to find the balance. And this is my mantra, if you like, with the modern offline. It's a life less digital, not zero digital, but less digital, because I think we could all benefit from spending less time in front of our screens. I think it's pretty obvious nowadays that people struggle with in-presence communication. People don't really know what to do with themselves if, I don't know, a social media platform crashes or there's no internet. People are like, oh, what do I do? You know, Chat GPT, artificial intelligence, they are useful tools, but people are starting to depend on them so much that they are forgetting how to use their brain. When was the last time you picked up a pen and paper and started writing something down? I realized this the other day as well. I'm so used to opening up a Google Docs file and just typing that for me to write something down feels strange. I swear my handwriting has deteriorated so much because I am not writing enough. And so I'm now making it a kind of mantra of mine to write something down every day, because we are just becoming so dependent on technology. And it ties back into like what the AWS outage taught us. And I spoke about this in a different podcast episode, but essentially it's highlighting that dependency. And I think it's a very dangerous place to be because we forget what it's like to be human. Technology, the internet, it was always designed to be a tool to assist us, to make our lives easier in some way, but not to make us lazy, not to be something that consumes us. And I feel like that distinction has become blurred. And so I'm creating this kind of movement to rediscover what it's like to do offline activities, to live a life that doesn't mean that everything has to be through a screen. And so if you're interested in getting inspired with my content, perhaps applying it to your own life, I'll put the links below in the show notes to the Modern Offline. But it's this: I feel like life doesn't happen on our phone, it happens in front of us. And so I'm really passionate about this because I realize how much of my life here I'm wasting because I'm always staring at a screen instead of being out in nature. On Saturday, when we did some filming in a country park that we went to, I felt so rejuvenated. And I realized that that's what I need to do more of. I need to be out more in nature. I need to be walking around, soaking up what life really is and not staring at a screen. I mean, I've seen some pretty, for me, shocking things, but really they are more normalized now in society of people like being at dinner in a restaurant and both the couple, friends, whatever they are using their phones and not even communicating with each other. Like this has become normal. But since when was that normal? You know, like we are meant to have interactions with each other, not through a screen. Life is happening here. It's not happening through your screen. And we forget as well with social media, because social media, I know, brings up a lot of anxiety in people. And I have suffered from that at points as well. But I read something really interesting on Instagram yesterday that basically said, welcome to my social media. This is not my life. It is my social media account. You don't know me. You know what I post on social media. And I was like, that is so very well put, because we forget sometimes that for a lot of people, even if they portray an account to be kind of natural, there's usually a strategy behind it, whether it's because they are promoting a brand or because they want to be seen in a particular way. There's usually strategy to all of the posts, even like the influencer-esque posts of people posing in really artistic ways in beautiful locations. And sometimes they'll put like these quotes to make it seem less vain than perhaps what it really is. There's always a strategy behind it, right? And so I think we need to remember that social media isn't representative of real life. It is representative of what a person wants you to know about their life. The end. I do not post about all of my life on social media. I share snippets of what life can be like here in South Italy, but I've always been aware of that distinction between what I put online and how my life really looks, because it's important that you keep parts of your life private. Absolutely. It's not possible that you can display yourself in this way to the entire world, because then I think you're in a very precarious place because everybody knows everything about you. And so, you know, at what point do you actually keep a piece of that for yourself? You know, so it's so interesting. Honestly, this whole concept, I could talk about it for weeks. And that's why I feel like I really touched on something. So my chin chin for this week is this: have a little look at your screen time first and foremost. How much time are you spending per week using your phone? If you have an iPhone, it's easy to do. You just go into your settings and you can find your screen time. I'm not sure about Android phones, but I'm sure there must be a way that you can track how much time you spend on your phone. If there isn't, or you don't know how to do it, pay attention to what you do during the day. When you have some downtime, what do you reach for first? Is it your phone? Is it your laptop? Is it your tablet? What do you do when you have a bit of downtime? Because for most people, they reach for their phones. This is interesting because I think you have to recognize there's a problem before you can do anything about it. And then I think it would be really good to, of course, follow and subscribe to my movement, the Modern Offline, but then start thinking about how you can live your life a little less online and a little more offline. And it's not to say that you have to give up the things that you love. Like I love listening to podcasts. I love watching videos that teach me something on YouTube, but it's about learning to have boundaries, learning to say, right, this is my online time and now this is my offline time, and I'm not going to be using technology. And that's the important part. So that is my chin chin for you for this week. I would love to know how you get on with this and how you feel your own kind of technology consumption is. Do you feel like you are suffering from digital fatigue? Comment below and let me know. If you are on Spotify or YouTube, most of the podcasting platforms now give you the ability to comment on my posts. So tell me what you're feeling. And I will see you in the next episode.